The following is brought to you by the Starfleet Podcast Network, SPN The Spin.
Red alert.
I was actually just talking to my manager. I said, look up the name Rick Sternbach, which he's a Star Trek fan. So I could have just said your name and he would have known because your name's it's a household name, basically. And he's messaging back like, oh my God, I want to ask him about his marine biology background. And he did all the artwork for the pads, the phasers, this and that. And I said, yeah, that's pretty huge.
This, that, and the other.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking to myself, well, how do you ask someone who's probably been asked all of the questions before in podcasts and interviews and conventions? So I'm thinking maybe I'll have something unique that you haven't been asked before. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed because sometimes I get lucky. So just want to introduce myself formally and for our audience, I'm BigJ with Beyond Trek Podcast, and I'm talking to a literal legend when it comes to Star Trek, Rick Sternbach. You've got many hats, production designer, illustrator, artist. Am I right? Did I miss anything or is there more?
Well, one correction. I was never a production designer.
Okay. You weren't production designer.
Which is, most people would think of that as an art director.
Okay.
The most I ever was senior illustrator / technical consultant for the Trek Fringe.
Okay, gotcha. So let me ask you this. If you could describe to me a little more about what that role means, and hopefully I'm not the first one to erroneously claim you're a production designer. I think that I could have swore I've read that. So there must be other people that take a term and don't exactly know the job description of that. To me, it sounds like that would be something that would be within your orbit, but I guess not. So could you kind of describe to me a little bit as to why that's different?
Sure. I mean, technically speaking, okay, in the art department, I was an illustrator, and going back to things like Star Trek: The Motion Picture, okay. I was an illustrator working alongside people like Mike Miner and Lee Cole, and my boss, who was the production designer, started out being Joe Jennings. Joe left to work on Shogun, which is a pretty neat title there. And Harold Michelson came in to be my boss. And Harold, was the kind of guy who, he worked for Hitchcock, and he was a terrific artist. But he was, the production designer is the boss of the art department. You have art directors and various assistants, and then people like me who sat at the drafting tables, or easels or whatever, and came up with various bits of art that the writers and producers could take a look at and say, oh yeah, we like that. Okay, let's see. Nah, we won't use this one, but we'll use that one. And it goes from there.
They're picking through everything.
Yeah. Well, we start off looking at a story synopsis, before the actual script drafts come out, and this is this is the case for feature films and for the series. We get a synopsis and get an early idea of what might be involved. An alien ship, some props, maybe some sketches to help out the costume department, alien makeup ideas. So we would help a number of the other crafts to visualize this stuff. Then when the actual scripts came out, we would get better understanding of, who the characters were, what props might have to be designed. Then again, we worked with a number of different crafts on the lot, and like prop vendors who were outside the studio the environment, and then things would get done, and then we'd be on to the next show.
Yes. So then, what was the turnaround time like on this? Because especially when you're working on a weekly series like Star Trek: The Next Generation, to me, it would feel like there's not enough time to illustrate and design all of these things. It would feel like you're constantly drawing. Do you feel like there was ever a time you had a pencil not in your hand?
What I tell people is every 10th working day, we were into a new show, new episode.
Okay.
So we were doing post-production on one, doing prep on another. We were doing like 2 or 3 different episodes simultaneously. Helping the VFX people, getting props designed, getting the drawings, out the door, so that the other crafts could get their stuff done. Now, 26 episodes in a season, you don't hear about that today.
No,
right?
The whole landscape has changed.
Exactly. So you're looking at 6 episodes, 8 episodes, 10 if you're lucky. We were doing 26. Okay. And then when when we would wrap a season, we might have a little bit of time off, little hiatus before the next season started. Except for the times when they would bring us in over hiatus to get ready for the next season.
No breaks here.
Time and a half or double time, fine with me.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't say no to that either. Honestly, would not.
Right. Yeah, but we did get some downtime, sure. Just looking back at like Next Gen, DS9, Voyager, the shows that I was primarily on. We would be doing a lot of episodes, and then getting some breaks on the weekends and some breaks over hiatus. But looking back at all of the stuff that we designed and helped to bring into reality, it's boxcar loads of stuff.
It is. Oh my God, it is. Yeah. Trying to look at all the pictures and everything, and it's something else when you look up, like when I was reviewing just some of the work that you did and seeing, oh my God, that's right. He designed this. He illustrated this. The things like the manuals, the phasers, the consoles, all of that. And I've got to tell you, the Star Trek, The Next Generation manual, I read that. I can't remember exactly when, but I spent a summer reading that. Just every word, the whole thing. Love that manual. I knew more about the Enterprise D at that time than any kid should have. And there's nothing I could do with that knowledge, a trivia show or something. What? And try to impress the girls with my Star Trek knowledge? No. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we had a good time doing it. Mike Okuda and I just, we knew this stuff forwards and backwards. We helped develop it for the writers. And for the fans, when Pocket Books, published it, it was a big seller. I think if I remember correctly, we outsold Tom Clancy and Stephen King for like a week.
Tom Clancy and Stephen King. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. But it only lasted a week, we were helping the writers with the tech stuff. Okay, the character drama, not so much for us. Okay, we were into explaining how these things worked, and if something came up in a script, we wanted to make sure that it sounded plausible. Because Star Trek, if you think back to the 60s, okay, 1964, the first pitch of Trek, okay, this was born out of the middle of the space age, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Gene Roddenberry believed in this stuff. Okay. And a lot of the people who were originally involved in Star Trek, Matt Jeffries, for goodness, was a pilot. Gene was a pilot. These people had a love for aerospace, and back in the mid 60s, wanted to take it further.
And I think that is something that when you think back on it, and I kind of forget about that sometimes, that you're talking about people that served in wars. I believe. Now I knew Gene Roddenberry was a pilot, but I'd have to look it up. I'm drawing a blank if he actually served any time during the war. I know Jimmy Doohan did, but yeah, for Gene, I'm losing that off the top of my head. But Wikipedia is your friend. Yes, absolutely. Well, and I've got it up, but it's taking all my computer power looking at all the stuff that you did. It's
right.
It's just unbelievable. Yeah. Now, here's one.
We believed, we in the art department, we believed in this stuff too, and we did our part to help the process.
So here's another question I've got for you. Now, it looks like you've been with Star Trek since the motion picture, or at least that was the first Star Trek property that you were involved in.
Yeah.
And so I want to go back a little bit further. I see here you went to the University of Connecticut. You started as an art major, but switched to marine biology. After leaving the university, you became an illustrator for books and magazines. So could you tell me, I want to know a little bit more about that's quite a switch, go from art to marine biology.
Well, I was always a science nerd. Okay. I grew up as a kid in the 50s, just gobbling up everything I could on, the developing space program. Okay. I tell people I was a kid when there was nothing in orbit, nothing. Okay. So I've seen it all happen. Right. I went to University of Connecticut for 3.5 years total. Okay. First 2 years as an art major. Now my dad was an architect, so I got a lot of this stuff early. Okay. Crayons and pencils and all that kind of stuff. At home, but in the university environment, I learned color theory and life drawing and calligraphy and all just all sorts of art related courses. And somewhere along the way, I took an interest in scuba diving, and that thing. That sort of activity and learning about life in the oceans and all of that kind of led me to think, I'm nuts about marine biology as well as art. Could I switch my major? Well, it would have taken me another 2.5 to 3 years to get through that. Some publishers and writers took an interest in the art that I was doing. Okay. And a lot of that was space art. I was given the chance to get my art published. And that was a major switch back full-time to doing art. And that was like in 1972, 73, thereabouts.
Right.
And it just took off from there. Now, the Trek connection starts in 1974.
Okay.
Gene Roddenberry was going to come out to Yale University. I was living nearby. I wasn't going to Yale, but I was living nearby, and I saw a little thing in the paper. Roddenberry's coming to New Haven, Connecticut, to Yale, to show a screening of The Cage. Oh,
and that had not been seen before, at least not publicly.
That. The footage had not yet been updated with some of the film clips that they found later.
Right.
Okay. Well, what did I do? I cold called the studio.
Oh, okay.
I figure, why not?
Well, and this was back in the day where the odds of being able to actually talk to a human person were a lot higher than it is today.
Oh, yeah. You
get all the automated recordings and everything.
I introduced myself. I'm not sure exactly who I spoke with. It might have been Susan Sackett, but it was probably someone else. And I introduced myself. I said, I'm an illustrator, and I understand Gene's coming to town. Would it be possible to meet with him after the screening for a few minutes? And they said yes.
What? Really?
They said yes. And Gene and I ended up talking for at least an hour.
Now, that seems, you had to have been surprised, because I'm surprised just hearing it. I would have thought that there would have been so much more red tape involved in a request like that. But
you would think.
It seems like, was it that different than it is now? Is it because Star Trek was not at that point at the level that it's become today? Because I'm sure not long after, or at least some point in our lifetimes, you couldn't call the studio and ask for any kind of sit down with Gene Roddenberry, not without lots of red tape, filling out forms and applications, giving a blood sample,
exactly,
et cetera, et cetera.
But again, the times were different, but these folks were old school. Okay.
Yeah.
And, just like, a lot of people say old school is the best school.
Yep. I agree.
I was able to meet with Gene. I showed a number of samples of the art that I was doing for the book and magazine market. Because I would go into Manhattan, I would go into New York to deliver finished art and that kind of thing. But in '74, Star Trek was like in reruns. The convention thing had just sort of started up. And Gene was hoping to maybe get another series or a film in the works.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't happen for another 4 years. Okay.
So, and this was in regards to Star Trek Phase 2, which is going to be the sequel series to the original series.
Well, Star Trek Phase 2. Now this, the DNA threads here are a little complex. In the late 70s, I hooked up with a number of folks who, today they are my space art tribe.
Right.
Preparing to do Cosmos with Carl Sagan.
Gotcha. And that's a big name. It's another big name.
Well, yeah. Well, Sagan I had known since 72. Okay.
Amazing.
I knew his wife Linda at the time, and I knew Nick.
Okay.
In 77, They were preparing to do Cosmos. There was an office in Philadelphia where Adrian Malone, who was the producer of the show Civilization, was getting things ready to move lock, stock, and barrel to Los Angeles, where Cosmos would be produced. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, I was living in Connecticut, and then I made the move to LA.
And that's a hell of a move.
It's a hell of a move.
But if you're going to get discovered, that's where you've got to go.
Well, yeah. But one of the also very cool things back in the late 70s was, again, cold calling, making introductions, bringing samples to show people. In late 77, I made a 2-week trip to LA and met up with art directors at a number of different studios. Okay. I met up with the gang doing phase 2. Mm-hmm. That's where I met Mike Miner and Joe Jennings and John Cartwright, the lead set designer. And Joe was very, very straight with me. He said, "I don't have anything for you right now."
Gotcha.
But I left my samples. Okay. And, I met with some folks at MGM. I met, I met up with Greg Jean at the Burbank Airport. They were working on some practical effects. So over this initial 2-week period back in 77, I was starting to meet up with a lot of people. And the whole story is just crazy complicated. The first art director who said, "We'll give you a job," was John Mansbridge over at Disney for The Black Hole.
You worked on The Black Hole. Oh, love that movie.
For a few months. Okay. For a few months.
Hey, it counts.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I got to understand the way the system worked, at least at Disney. Okay. They were kind of tripping over themselves in terms of the story. I only had a couple of months of experience with them because they let us all go to go back and work on the script. Okay. And I was just about ready to move back to Connecticut, like for good.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was sending in some artwork to some of the New York publishers. So yeah, things were working out sort of, kind of. And then one night, Joe Jennings calls and says, "They're announcing Star Trek: The Motion Picture in the morning. Do you want to come in?"
Yeah, right.
Oh my goodness. So again, these crazy events, these things that happened that just worked.
I can only imagine getting that call. And what was your reaction to that? Did you kind of sit there thinking, what did I just hear?
Well, I thanked him. I said, "I will see you in the morning." And then I had a big glass of wine.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, this came from, making introductions, trying to talk with people who were doing these projects. Okay. And if I had not done that, if I had not taken those first little steps, nothing would have happened.
You're right. You've got to build up to that.
Yeah. So I went in, and they had the press gathering on stage, where they introduced the cast members, and Robert Wise was there, and then after the press gathering, we went upstairs to the art department.
Okay.
And looked around. Okay, it was not yet fully set up. That particular art department would be a very familiar, pardon me, hold on a second. Let me go back. Okay, so after the press gathering, Mike Miner and I went upstairs to what would become our art department. Some years later, it would become the art department for Next Generation. And just a very familiar home base.
It feels like it, and it sounds like it, because so they use that, and at that time, correct me if I'm wrong, I know we've all heard this and read about this, but at that point, there were still a lot of, there were sets that were built. There were actually sets that were built and test scenes filmed for Star Trek Phase 2 before Star Wars came out and just threw everything into a whirlwind. And now all these science fiction franchises are trying to get into that. Everyone now wants to get a piece of that. And that was a big reason why we got the motion picture instead of Phase 2. Now, were you involved in any, you weren't involved in any of that artwork for Phase 2, but were you able to take anything from that to use in your designs for the motion picture?
Well, Phase 2, we roamed around the stages to see, what state of completion they were in. When Harold Michelson took over as production designer, everything changed. Everything got modernized. We ended up doing a lot more complicated shapes and, interesting set of stylistic things within the corridors, within the bridge, within the living quarters, things like that, in the engine room. Oh my goodness, the warp core. The original warp core that had two stacks of giant fins, that was replaced by the big glowing warp core.
Yep.
With the plasma conduit that ran down horizontally.
It pretty much spanned vertically the entire up to the top portion, the top back portion of the saucer section, down to the all the way through the secondary hull, and then you had that horizontal part that went all the way to the back. Looked like beyond where the warp pylons would be, I believe. We never really saw up close, but it was way in the distance. You could see it.
No, but they were able to build a couple of sort of pylon plasma conduits, where you could see the V.
Yes.
That would go back up there, and they did they did some of the little scale tricks, shrinking things into the distance because the stage wasn't that huge. Good grief. I'm guessing, I'm trying to remember when this was, from like April to September of 78. Boy, everything was cranking on all cylinders on those stages. A lot of my work was mainly in the graphics area, following Lee Cole's, stylistic rules for things that would have shown up on Phase 2. Okay, I ended up doing maybe a third of the graphics on the ship, control panel stuff, signage.
Mm-hmm.
We had the sign shop on the lot that was making, these gorgeous, signs that would be put up on walls and things. So we just, the engine was firing, and we were doing everything we could.
And it sounds like it was a pretty quick turnaround doing all of that. Now, here's moving away just briefly from Star Trek. I saw this, and I would have to say that this is another one of the things that surprised me, that you just never know where Rick Sternbach's name is going to pop up. But you did work on another 80s sci-fi classic, The Last Starfighter.
Oh, yeah.
The Last Starfighter. That was, again, another favorite, which I could watch that today. To me, it still holds up. Now, I know graphic-wise, it's the 80s. We all know that. But could you tell us some more about your work with The Last Starfighter? I'm sure anyone who grew up in the 80s sci-fi has seen that and would like to know more about your take on it.
Yeah. Well, I was over at Digital Productions, working alongside Ron Cobb, which was an astounding experience. Just to be able to learn from Ron and, do what I did, best for the production. The actual full-blown art department was over at MGM. Digital Productions was handling all of the, that groundbreaking CGI work. Taking Ron's designs for the Gunstar, and some of the alien ships, and the tech folks at Digital were able to to take the blueprints and input them into the system. Make polygons, color them up, throw textures on them, and make them look as real as they could for the day. Right. I helped out with things like storyboarding some of the sequences. Also kind of, looking over the shoulders of some of the TDs, the technical directors, watching them move, a lot of the low res models just to get the spacecraft motions, to look real. I also provided them with texture maps for Rylos, the planet.
Yes.
Our moon, the green moon, and Pluto. And these would, these bodies would all be wrapped. The flat art would be wrapped onto spheres in the computer. They had a Cray. They had a Cray XMP, which I guess can fit in your iPhone today.
Yeah, pretty much.
But the Cray was astounding, and they had a number of various workstations with different resolutions of graphics where they could put these moving sequences together. I learned a little bit about inputting blueprints into the system. They had a digitizing tablet that was like 40 by 60 inches, and you would use a wired puck with crosshairs. To input the vector points and build polygons. So I learned some of that. I didn't actually work on any of the sequences, but I learned the lingo. I learned the process that they went through, while I was doing my more traditional art. And it was just a blast. It was just an amazing time.
Well, I'm sure that was probably a nice change from Star Trek, at least a little bit, to get out and do some different things. And what I want to talk about,
but this was before Next Gen.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, a few years before.
So it was a nice, it was a nice break. But it was sort of filler.
Exactly. Well, something to keep busy, right?
Oh, it was fine. It was fine. It was terrific. I mean, just, working with folks at Digital. And again, as I say, working and learning from Ron Cobb. Holy cow.
Is there, when you work on these things, do you go back and watch the finished product? I don't know about you, but for me, and I think I share this probably with others, is that when it comes to podcasting, I do not like hearing my own voice. When I have to edit these things, it's just, let me just get through this because, and it's kind of like the answering machine or when you record your voice greeting on the phone, you don't like hearing it. Do you like seeing the work that you do, or do you just do it and it's there, but you don't like to actually see it on screen?
Oh, I don't mind. I don't mind. I mean, I like seeing, things, especially if there's like maybe like a little bit of alien tech, and it's like, wait a second, I did do that one. So since we did so much for the franchise. A lot of things really, because of that time factor. We would, I could doodle on the, honest to God, on the back of a script cover. Okay. And the VFX guys would take that off to the effects house, and literally, like a back of the envelope kind of drawing, because they needed to get the thing built and animated like real quick. But then, on the other side of things, something like the USS Voyager was a 5-month process. Okay. Doodles, more refined drawings, full blueprints, so that Brazil Fabrication could actually build the thing. Various levels of time involved in these things. And, I love seeing them. I will watch, episodes of Next Gen and, DS9. I was on DS9 for maybe 3 seasons. And they had a full blown art department anyway, so they were in good hands.
Right.
And Voyager. And one of the weird things is I am seeing so much of my stuff on Lower Decks.
You are. Well, yeah, because that's a part of that same time period. So that's got to be very fulfilling, because you are pretty much, you define the look of the 24th century.
Well, it's fun. It's fun. I haven't had any direct contact with the Lower Decks people, but I keep noticing things that I designed. It's like, oh, I drew that. Okay, I did that. Oh, there's the exocomp. That's mine.
Yeah, your stuff lives on, and it's going to be probably forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's a riot. It's a hoot. And the aside from the physical stuff that I've drawn up, I raise a fist in the air for cetacean ops. Okay, that's mine, baby.
Yeah. Oh, is it? We never got to see it until Lower Decks, so that was yours. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Hey, I fought for that.
I'm glad you did. And we always, because we know where you had it on the Enterprise D. We knew where it was at. And question I've got for you on that is, why did it take until Lower Decks to actually be able to see it on screen? We knew it was there. It was in the manuals. You saw the outside of it. At least you knew where on the ship it was located. But why was that the one place we never got to see?
I don't know. I have not a clue. It probably would have, taken many seasons of budget to, put together some actual whales or dolphins.
Yeah, well,
I mean, they could have been CGI. Sure, they could have been CGI, but the fact that they're now in the history of the show is fine by me.
well, I think that's something you probably thought for a while, and I might be oversimplifying it, but you have a set that looks like any other set full of LCARS displays in the 24th century, and you have a thing like a little blow up pool or whatever, and you put a dolphin in it. There's been more complex things that I've seen on Star Trek. To me, it seemed like it wouldn't have been that difficult to do. But hey, I'm not part of the production, not a producer, not artist, anything. I could be way out of my mind there, but I don't know. To me, it seemed like it would be simple. But I guess there was at the time, there was no story that called for any relevant use of that area. Now, were there any other places or areas or designs that you had in these manuals and for these ships that you always thought, I wish that this would have been seen or would have been used? Like, for example, the inside of a warp nacelle. I mean, we even saw that in an episode of Next Gen.
Yeah, we saw the inside of the nacelle. It was a bit of a cheat because where they had people walking around on little bits of decking and ladders and all that kind of thing. In my headcanon, that would have been filled up with equipment.
Right.
Related to the Bassard collector and something called the continuous cycle fractionator, and just stuff that had been designed into the front end of the nacelle. But they wanted to put people in there. Who am I to, yell at them?
No, just say no. You can't put people in there. That's like putting people inside the engine of a car.
No. I wanted to keep my job.
Yeah. I'm sure you did. And it worked. It really worked. You never thought, wow, there are people in there. But here is something that I think has always bothered me. And I hope I'm not the only one. But how in the hell does anyone get from the nacelle to the ship? The curve of the hull, the secondary hull, the curve to the nacelles, I can't see how you're able to get up there just with that turn. Is it so? Well, how do you get there?
The pylon. All right.
Right.
The pylon that goes up to the nacelle is thick enough for either a very small turbo.
Mm-hmm.
Or a crawlway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's sort of like a Jeffries tube, that was small enough to go through the pylon, in basically the same direction as the plasma conduit. Again, there's also an airlock on the pylon, the nacelle base. There's an airlock.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And you could always transport.
True. Yeah. That's true. Is that something that when you were designing the ship and when they came up with saying, well, we want to have people here, what's your thought there? That are you thinking in your head, okay, when I designed this, it was not meant that people could go from point A to point B like that, and it's not even really designed to make that the most believable thing, but now you want that to happen? Does it kind of, I don't want to say mess up the design, but does it then make you think, well, this is going to be silly if you try to do this because what you want to see and what you want to have happen doesn't match what's capable with how the ship looks, with the design of the ship?
You're going to see that. You're going to see that throughout all of Hollywood history. Okay.
Right.
Something the size of a rowboat, but you go inside and it's the size of a cabin cruiser.
Right.
TV and movies have been like that forever. Okay. What we did, especially starting on Next Gen, was to try to come up with plausible stuff, engineering that kind of made sense. If the writers and producers wanted to kind of, bend the rules a bit, it's fine. It's their sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we would at least support what they decided in the scripts. Okay. We would support that with, let's say, suggested bits of dialogue. Okuda and I wrote like 1,400 pages of memos.
Oh my God.
Over 14 years. Okay.
Okay.
And the bosses were very, very good listeners. Okay.
That's a plus.
It was a team thing. We helped. Okay. And things got done. There was one scene. I think it was, good grief. I think it was Best of Both Worlds. Right. Most of the stuff that I wrote about either had to do with astronomical hints and tips or, engineering stuff. But there was one thing in Best of Both Worlds. We're looking at the destruction of, a lot of Starfleet ships.
Yeah, from the Battle of Wolf 359.
Right, exactly. Okay, and a lot of the names are being read off.
Yes.
And, I'm looking at the script, and it's like, there's a name here that could be very important. So I wrote a memo to Jerry Taylor. She was wonderful. She was a great listener. I had some good times writing things, to send to her. And I said, Jerry, we need to put the Melbourne in there.
Okay.
And as soon as the name Melbourne was spoken, cut to Riker, looking devastated.
Yes, because that was the ship that he was supposed to transfer to as a captain.
No kidding.
Wow.
And they filmed it.
Wow. And that was your idea to do that.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
That look on his face was, that could have been me.
Exactly. But it's not, all of these memos, all of these ideas, we were not pushing them. Okay. We were offering nicely. It's like, here, what do you think about this?
Mm-hmm.
And if they wanted to do it, they would do it. And that would, those sorts of things, felt terrific, and
yes, and I bet it does.
Yeah.
It's got to feel great when your expertise and your input is taken as that. Okay, if Rick says that we can do this, we can do it. If he says that no, this would be silly, it wouldn't work that way, then we're not going to do it because he knows exactly what he's talking about. And he and Mike are basically they are the ones that are the design, the bread and butter of the 24th century and the technology.
Yeah. Well, now it wasn't just me and Mike. Okay. Because we had people who were really into the space stuff. Okay.
Okay.
Like Naren Shankar. Okay.
Yep.
Was with us on Trek. He's the guy responsible for The Expanse, which is one of my go-to shows for spaceflight.
The Expanse. Why does that sound familiar?
Well, look it up.
Yeah, let me do that. There have been so much that I binged and watched during the pandemic that I can't. I've forgotten more than what I remember watching.
Exactly. But my point is that
okay, I did. I watched some of The Expanse. I've got to go back and finish
yes, you
that
have
up.
to watch all. You have to watch all of it. Okay.
Yep.
So we had writers and producers who were into science fiction, who were into space flight, showing what could happen in the future. And we would occasionally end up with, some weird, silly alien stuff going on, but that's Star Trek.
Right. Exactly. That's what Star Trek is about.
Yeah.
So, I definitely want to know, because you're talking about adding in the idea of saying the name, the Melbourne, which was going to be Riker's ship if he had accepted promotion to captain.
Yep.
Have there been any instances, episodes, or seen something that, had you not intervened, whether you knew about it beforehand or just happened to hear, is there any big bullet that was dodged that you were able to keep something bad, ridiculous, or embarrassing from happening? Probably loaded one.
I cannot think of anything right off the bat.
Okay. Which is probably a good thing, that they made sure they didn't get that far to where you had to avert disaster.
No, this goes back a lot of years, right? And a lot of episodes, and I just can't think of anything.
Well, okay, here's one for you. I've got a little beef to pick. Beef to pick here. Why did on any ship, why is it that the warp core ejection system was always offline? Didn't you design that to work a little better? It seemed like that was one thing that was always broke. Warp core is damaged, needs to be ejected, or it'll blow up the ship. It's offline. That had to be one that bothered you.
I can't use the word bother.
Right.
It's a trope. Okay. I mean, It happened. They wrote it like that, and that's the way it is.
The one thing that's supposed to work, it just doesn't. It's storytelling. It just doesn't.
They forgot to download the control system update.
That's what happens when you skip updates. I'm going to say this for everybody out there that uses a computer, because I work in IT, and I will tell you, start rebooting your computers. Start installing these updates. Stop avoiding them. There's important stuff out there. You are leaving your system vulnerable to attack and other things. I know we don't like updates. Sure, we don't like updates. You want to try to do something, and just when you're busy or you have a deadline, please wait. Windows is updating. Okay, I get it. But here's the thing. It's worth it to do it then than to have something happen and now you're down for a few hours or half a day while I'm trying to fix it or have to rebuild a new computer. So I bet now you would have wished that you would have been patient for 5 or 10 minutes. Same thing with the Enterprise. Yeah, I bet you they would have wanted to run that LCARS update, because now you would have been able to fix the thing, to fix the glitch or whatever it is. Right. So I would think that with so much that you are designing and illustrating, if you just had to guess, wild ballpark guess, how much of your work wasn't used?
Oh, good grief. I mean, in a lot of cases, there were multiple concepts drawn up. Okay. And the producers would point and say, "Ooh, I like that one," which means that 4 others, went into a folder somewhere. Mm-hmm. occasionally we could pull something back out and make a couple of changes and say, "Oh, look, here's this new one."
Yeah. Watch what happens when I draw a line this way. Oh,
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, for most everything that we've designed, okay, there were at least one or two alternatives that just never saw the light of day, which is fine. That's it. It's just part of the process.
I've got to tell you that one of the designs that you did, and I'll tell you the one that really stuck with me, or at least was the one that started right away. So when Next Gen aired, the design that you did for the phasers on the first two seasons, the kind of the Dustbuster looking phaser design, I loved that one. Loved it. I think that has to be, in a close second would be the season 3, 4, I think from 3 to 7, then that design, before they made it too little and just weird. But those first two seasons, that design, I can't tell you how often I had a big pile of Legos, and I took these Legos, and any episode that would have a close up of the phaser, because I love seeing it. Every time I saw it, loved it. And I would pause it, and I would take these Legos and I would build as close as I could with Legos at the time.
Yeah.
Something that looked like the phaser, like that phaser from season 1. Even created this holster out of Legos. So I had this thing, this Lego phaser, and I made a holster that it could slide in, and I could even hook it to a belt. Like I could carefully. So basically, I was able to put a belt of a Lego holster with the Rick Sternbach design phaser. At least, like I said, as close as you could do with Lego parts at the time. They weren't fancy like they are now.
Right.
And so that was my first mock-up. And then now my dad, he's a woodworker. He's been woodworker many, many years. He's got that gift of it. So here's what I wanted him to do. I wanted him to make me one of those phasers out of wood. So
wait, the Dustbuster or the Cricket?
The Dustbuster.
Oh, yeah.
So I drew it, drew it on some paper, the shape of it, the size, what it looked like. It was like I was a designer, like I was, designing this mock-up, hand it off to him, like, here, can you make this? And he made it. And I will have to tell you that it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all.
Nice. All right.
And it was, I wish I had that for the longest time, and I don't know what happened with it. But I had him do that. And I did the design that started with season 3. If you kind of have that in your head, that design.
The one they call the Cobra.
The Cobra, yeah. They call it Cobra. Okay, awesome. I
didn't have names for these things. Okay, the names came later.
Yeah. So I had him make the Dustbuster. We'll call it the Dustbuster, the season 1 and 2 hand phaser. Had to make that out of wood, and the Cobra as well. So here I was with these. That was how much your designs influenced me. Was I've got my dad building toys out of wood from drawings that I'm making, and
that's cool.
He did the wood shape and all that, the cutting, the sanding, and then I would take it and I would spray paint it. I would do the spray painting. So I would tape up the parts that I didn't want to be this color, spray paint it, let that dry, then tape the other part so I could do the gray and all that. Had little pieces of cardboard that I painted white and glued on there for the buttons, for the trigger button and the beam intensity and beam width buttons, and the little, I used a little strip of something for the charge indicator. So
nice.
You designed this thing, and here I am as best as I could with both of them, with both of those phasers, trying to make them as close as I could as a kid to what you designed. So have you come across any other person that told you, hey, your work was so inspirational that I tried to make it myself?
Oh, I mean, there have been so many folks out there, who, especially for cosplay kind of things.
Yep.
They've sculpted things out of, like Super Sculpey, or, plastic or wood or, I mean, it makes my heart go pitter pat. Some of the folks out there who are getting into 3D printing, are bringing these things up, from 30 something years ago. And it's pretty neat to see.
Well, your work has that much of a lasting impression.
Well, I guess. Yeah. No, it's fun. It's fun. I look back at a lot of this stuff. I put together sets of sketches occasionally, and so I'm looking at this stuff like every day, and remembering, okay, oh yeah, Jim Martin, and helped out with the runabout, and I got to do a deck breakdown of the Klingon bird of prey, and all that kind of stuff, and so it's with me all the time. I've just had a ball doing it.
Have you ever thought to yourself, maybe then, maybe not until afterwards, that a great sense of responsibility, like I and a couple other people are responsible for this show, how it looks, and at the time, did you realize this is going to be a cornerstone of Star Trek? Our drawings and designs are going to be so notched in history that we feel like we're personally responsible for how the 24th century looks because we were that much involved in how it looked.
Oh, I think all of us, who created things out of thin air for the franchise, I think all of us, appreciate having been accepted into the fold, as it were, and all of the designs that we were able to accomplish. Yes, we all believe in the overall scenario, and we all love what we worked on.
I bet you did. You had to. You have to like what you're doing in order to do it and like doing it. And
and again, as I mentioned, we're so appreciative of the folks who ran these shows. We appreciate having been accepted, for the knowledge that we had and the talent that we had for turning these into, drawings that others could work from. Big team effort.
And here's the other thing that I just realized that it probably has dawned on you is that your work with those designs in TNG, DS9, and Voyager, anything after would have to have some kind of influence or design lineage from what you did, even if you weren't involved. And for example, I'm going to use Star Trek Picard, because that was the first series that we got of something that took place after Voyager and Nemesis. And what you're talking about is, let's see, I want to say the first season of Picard was about, I'm sure you talking to Star Trek people, you're just amazed at how geek we can go with this stuff and tell you, okay, I think there's about 12 years in between the events of Voyager and Nemesis to that first season. I could be off a little bit, but
you have to check your star date calendar.
Yeah, right. I'm going to have to check the star dates. Did you have anything to do with the star dates?
No.
Okay.
No, that goes way back. But in terms of the more more recent shows, okay, like Picard, guys like John Eaves are in there. They've been cranking on this stuff for the last few years, and big thumbs up.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Exactly.
All of the the different shows that are out there. Even onto things like Lower Decks. Okay, you have illustrators and set designers and miniature builders, and these people get it. All right. And they are continuing this process. Okay. I had a fun time for like 15 years.
Yep.
I'm waving at the folks who were keeping it going.
So here it is. I looked it up. It's about 20 years in between the events of the ending of Nemesis. Star Trek Nemesis was the furthest up we got during that era of Star Trek. And then Picard started in the year 2399. So it's about 20-year difference. And at least the way it looked to me, even though you're not involved with that series, there still has to be a design lineage from your work, just in the technical sense of, this is what my work looks like right now in the timeline. What would it look like in 20 years?
Oh yeah, it's in there. It's in there.
Right. It's kind of like with older versions of Windows. I mean, take Windows 10 right now. Go back 20 years. It's still got some of the foundation there, some of the bones of it, that there's that. It's not so different that it's completely alien. It's not like going from Windows to Mac. So your influence still is maintained further in the timeline. It's like you didn't just do the work on these 3 shows. You have affected anything that comes after that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we all did.
Wow. That has got to be, how does that make you feel? What, it just waking up on some random morning and just say, the timelines of Star Trek, anything after TNG is going to look like something I designed. I am locked in Star Trek history.
It's an evolution. It's an evolution. There are a lot of us who were in, look at the you want to talk about lineage, go back to 64. Okay. Go back to people like Matt Jeffries.
Yep.
Okay. And yes, we are threads in this long, process. Right. And yeah, it's cool to see, oh yeah. Hey, I designed that kind of thing, and now they're changing it up a little bit and they're adding to it. And there's so many other people who are working this stuff now. Again, I wave at them. I give them a big thumbs up.
Do you still get consulted on any of this stuff? Any of the newer stuff?
No, not really.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay. Got you. Well, and it sounds like, hey, I'm content with the role that I played in Star Trek. Is that something you would say is true, that generally after it's all been said and done, that you're happy with the work? Are there any regrets that you have?
No, not really. it was a good long run, and we did lots and lots of very, very cool stuff.
Okay, that's great. Well, it's always a plus. I think that's something that we would all like to have, is the kind of career that we thoroughly enjoyed doing, that had a lasting effect, and something that we felt like we left it all on the field. We have no regrets, nothing we really wish we would have done differently or handled differently. You got to do all of it and leave it all out there. Would that be a correct assessment?
I guess.
Yeah, I hope so. Now what's going to happen is you're going to be thinking about that tonight. So it's okay. Wait a minute. BigJ asked me if there was anything I wish I would have done differently or had regrets on. You're going to be up at like 1 a.m. thinking, and then you're going to curse my names. And damn it,
no way,
because of you.
No way. Nope.
Good, because I'd hate to be the one that's responsible for that memoir, the things I regret about my design work with Star Trek.
Nope.
Well, that's good. That's got to be a good feeling then to have that. Well, Rick, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you taking out the time to talk with me today. This has been an amazing discussion. I've learned so many things about what went into the Star Trek that I grew up with. I grew up in the golden age, what we call the golden age of Trek. I was 12. No, I'm sorry. I was 10 when TNG aired. And I probably shouldn't have. Yeah, don't. It's fine. It's okay. There's a long time ago for all of us. So yeah, I was 10 when TNG aired, but it put such a lasting impression on me with your work. And I'm sure it has inspired people to go into careers like yours, to go into college courses and base their majors off of things that you did or that you should.
Oh no, yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing. One of my pals who taught me everything I needed to know about matter-antimatter reactions, Dr. Steve Howe. He was with Los Alamos Labs for a very long time. He and his partner came out to visit us at Paramount. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Hey, can we bring our lab coats and get our pictures taken in front of the warp core?" Because he was inspired by Trek.
Yeah.
The original show. Okay. And now, Steve taught me everything I needed to know about, deuterium and anti-deuterium reactions within the warp core. Okay.
Right.
So yes, there have been lots and lots of people who were inspired by this stuff, to do in real life. Okay. And, on we go.
You designed the iPad before there was an iPad. When you really think about it.
Yeah. No. 2001 had it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. You're right. Yeah, you're not wrong on that. And I think, but there's a lot in Star Trek that evolved into the technologies
of course,
that we have today.
Of course.
And it's funny you say that, because I have seen that discussion had about iPads, tablets. They started with Star Trek. Well, no, not really. It started with 2001. I think everyone probably forgets about that, and that would kill a lot of arguments there. Like, okay, so we were both wrong.
Hey, look, even Captain Kirk, signed off on an electronic pad of some sort.
True. Yeah, it looked kind of an electronic clipboard and looked like.
Yeah, exactly. So we just made things evolve.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. So see, I was about to let you loose to enjoy the rest of your afternoon, but you brought up something that I've also always wanted to know, and I think a lot of us have. So, with the pads, why do you have to have 11 sitting on your desk to look busy? Couldn't these pads have had like a button to take you to the next page. Why were there so many that were shown on screen as like each one has one thing on it? Couldn't one be used to accomplish the same thing, or was that the sign of this person is busy and here's how we show it? We'll put all these pads on their desk instead of what would be more realistic of, I just need one.
You would have to talk to the writers and the directors for that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. Damn. I was hoping you'd be able to, that you had some interaction with that, or had that same question of, okay, I designed these pads, but why are you putting so many of them out there like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Of course we had a question, but again, we weren't going to bring it up.
You like that job too much. It was just, okay.
Yes, indeed.
You ask for the thing. I do the thing. I'm not going to ask you why. Here it is.
Yep.
Whereas for me, I probably would have been one of those guys like, hey, he's asking too many questions and some of them make sense. So we might have to tell him to cool it. Well, Rick, thank you. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you have in regards to any current projects, social medias, anything that you want to talk about or promote for our audience before we wrap up?
Well, what I'm doing these days, I'm doing water slide decals for the hobby market. And if you go to culttvman.com, you can search them out.
So that's Cult TV Man, all one word.
Yep.
.com.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Well, Rick, on behalf of myself with Beyond Trek Podcast, I want to thank you very, very, very much for talking with me. I think this was excellent. I know that the audience and the other co-hosts are really looking forward to hearing this, and had a lot of fun with our talk, and just want to say to you to live long and prosper.
Yeah, and the same to you, and thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, you can support us at patreon.com/BeyondTrek.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your ears. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.